Who is the most valuable fantasy running back for 2020? We'll answer that question next. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the 2020 Fantasy Football Season Recap. This is one of our four-part series on fantasy MVPs, and in this video, we're talking about the running back position. So let's get right into it. Number 5, David Montgomery. First player on our list, top 5 fantasy MVPs at the running back spot. Number 5, it's David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears. Now, early in the season when Tariq Cohen went down with injury, Chicago, they just kind of decided to roll with Montgomery as basically their only guy in the backfield there, and he took advantage. And again, when you're talking fantasy MVPs, it's not just how the player played, but it's also where you got them in the draft for the value that they would return to you. Montgomery with an ADP of 81.6 to start the year. He was the 29th running back off the board in your fantasy drafts, but he finished overall as the RB4 for his 15 games. So some great value there. 7 top 12s and 11 weeks in the top 24. And really the big reason why Montgomery makes this list at number 5, it was that great run that he went on towards the end of the season around your fantasy playoff time. In weeks 12 through 17, Montgomery was the RB8 or better in every one of those weeks. And also he finished as the second highest appearing running back on Yahoo's top 500 list of fantasy teams, appearing on 31.0% of those teams. Also the 5th overall player at any position on that list. So a great year for David Montgomery. Number 4, James Robinson. Next on the list, it's James Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And man, another player you're talking about, big value. ADP starting the year at 106.1. The 38th running back off the board. A lot of you, if you played him, probably picked him up off the waiver wire. He finished the year as the RB6. Didn't have a great finish down the stretch during your playoff time, but still 8 top 12s and led the league with the most top 24s for a running back with 13. He played 14 games, and he was in the top 24, 13 out of those 14 games. That's a really great run for a rookie. 5 weeks in the top 5. James Robinson definitely moving up that draft chart for 2021. Number 3, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry at number 3 on this list. Another great year for the Tennessee Titans. Of course, one of the highly drafted players every year. ADP of 5.6, the 5th running back off the board in last year's drafts. Finishing overall as the RB3, 10 weeks in the top 12 and 12 top 24 finishes. Of course, you know, one of the things with Henry is he's a pure running back. You're not going to get a whole lot out of pass catching for like your PPR leagues, but 10 rushing yard games of 100 or more yards this year. That led the league, and also 17 rushing touchdowns, tops in the NFL. A great year for Henry. 6 weeks in the top 5 and 3 weeks as the RB1. So Derrick Henry, a tremendous season again for the Tennessee Titans. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. A great year for the Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook, another player drafted high. His ADP started the year not quite as high as Henry, but pretty close, 8.1. He was the 6th running back off the board, and he finished overall as the RB2 for his 14 games. 9 top 12s and 12 weeks in the top 24. Some huge games in the 2020 season for Dalvin Cook. He had 8 100-plus yard rushing games and had 16 rushing touchdowns for the year. Also, he spent 6 weeks in the top 5 and 3 weeks as RB1. He was the 4th highest appearing running back on Yahoo's top 500 list, appearing on 28.6% of those rosters. And that was also the 8th overall player at any position. So a great year for Dalvin Cook. Number 1, Alvin Kamara. Our fantasy MVP at the running back spot, it's Alvin Kamara from the New Orleans Saints. A great year, finishing overall as the RB1 in his 15 games. ADP starting the year of 4.7. That was the 4th running back off the board, and he finished with 11 weeks in the top 12. That was first amongst all running backs, and 12 weeks in the top 24. So a great season. Of course, had that huge game in week 16 for the Fantasy League Championships. Overall for the year, 16 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns. That total of 21 was the most for any running back. And again, 6 weeks in the top 5, 3 weeks as RB1. And also, he was the highest of any player at any position on Yahoo's list of top 500 teams. 42.4% of all rosters he found himself on. He had to be our choice. Alvin Kamara, fantasy MVP at the running back position. Looking ahead to early fantasy draft projections for 2021 at the running back spot. These top 5 players, if they're not the top 5 players drafted for you in your fantasy draft, I'll be surprised. Christian McCaffrey coming back from injury. I expect him to come back strong. He's such a huge player in fantasy. I'd be surprised if he's not, again, the consensus number 1. I think Alvin Kamara moves his way up to 2 and Dalvin Cook in at 3. Derrick Henry follows, and then again, coming back from injury, Saquon Barkley. I think he'll round out that top 5. A little bit of a rough year for Ezekiel Elliott, but he's still the main guy in Dallas. They'll probably turn things around for that team next year, so I've got him at 6th. Nick Chubb, a great year for the Cleveland Browns. We talked about James Robinson. Second-year player Jonathan Taylor in Indy, and then I've got Aaron Jones rounding out the top 10. Thank you for checking out the video. This is one of our 4-part series looking back at the fantasy MVPs at the different positions for the 2020 fantasy football season. Be sure to check out all 4 videos and leave us your comments below. There are some good young players pushing that top 10 for next year. So let us know if you agree with the players that we have or if you think some of those other guys should have made that list. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. They both help out a ton. And as always, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.